form, and India deserves a position.
Hello and welcome viewers, I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World, and here are the top headlines. Israel has stated that US forces are taking part in overseeing and coordinating aid transfer into the Gaza Strip as part of the US brokered Gaza peace plan. While the truce is meant to unleash a torrent of aid across Gaza, humanitarian agencies have stated that far too little aid is reaching Gaza. Russia has launched a barrage of drone and missiles in an overnight attack on Ukraine. The strikes have claimed 3 lives and have damaged key energy infrastructure facilities. 3 Ukrainian drones have struck an electricity substation in the Vologda region, marking one of Kiev's deepest strikes into Russian territory till date. This comes after Russia's overnight attack on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. US airlines and travelers slogged through a second day of flight cuts across the country amid US government shutdown. The Federal Aviation Administration instructed airlines to cut 4% of flights at 40 major airports. The third round of peace talks between Pakistan and Afghanistan have ended without any agreement on tackling cross-border terrorism. Both sides are trading blame for the collapse of negotiations. Indonesian police are investigating the Jakarta explosion that injured almost 100 people. Police are probing whether the high school student was radicalized in the run-up to the explosion. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense says that it has detected 18 Chinese military aircraft, 7 naval vessels, and 1 official ship operating around its territorial waters. Second typhoon in a week is now churning towards the Philippines, with residents in its path warned to flee the looming destructive winds and life-threatening storm surges. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. An Israeli security official has stated that US forces are now helping to coordinate and oversee aid transfers into the Gaza Strip alongside Israel under a ceasefire plan proposed by US President Donald Trump. The US-led Civil Military Coordination Center, or CMCC, has commenced operating from southern Israel to manage aid flows and stabilize security in Gaza. According to the official, while Israel remains involved in supervision and monitoring, the CMCC will now decide what aid enters Gaza and how. Despite the ceasefire, humanitarian agencies have reported that insufficient aid is now reaching Gaza, where almost all of the 2.3 million residents have lost their homes, and famine was also confirmed back in August. Israel, meanwhile, has maintained that it's meeting its obligations, averaging 600 trucks of supplies per day. This is the latest that we are tracking as far as the humanitarian aid into Gaza is concerned. CMCC is taking lead on aid entry decisions. In the meantime, Israel claims that it is providing 600 trucks of supplies to Gazans per day. Meanwhile, UN reports have come out and criticized Israel up until now. In fact, despite the ceasefire, humanitarian agencies have reported that insufficient aid is reaching Gaza, where almost all of the 2.3 million residents have lost their homes. In fact, the United Nations confirmed that a famine was taking place. This confirmation was given back in August. In the meantime, the US-led Civil Military Coordination Center, the CMCC, has commenced operating from southern Israel to manage aid flows and stabilize security in the enclave. According to the official, while Israel remains involved in supervision and monitoring, the CMCC will now decide what aid enters Gaza and how. United States forces, of course, helping to coordinate, oversee transfers of the aid. There's been considerable criticism regarding what the IDF is doing. Meanwhile, Israel has maintained that it is meeting its obligations and averaging 600 trucks of supplies per day. Joining us on the broadcast is Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, Senior Strategic and Defense Expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. An Israeli security official has now come out and stated that US forces are helping to coordinate and oversee transfers of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. In fact, the US-led CMCC has commenced operating. It will be managing the aid flows and it will help stabilize security in Gaza. It is the CMCC that's going to be deciding what sort of aid enters into Gaza, how it does so. There has been, as I mentioned earlier, considerable international criticism against the IDF, with certain humanitarian agencies such as the United Nations pointing out that aid is not being given in sufficient amounts. The IDF claims that it has been averaging 600 trucks of supplies per day. But of course, in the meantime, reconstruction is of crucial importance, since houses of ordinary Gazans have been razed, they've been reduced to rubble on the ground, and humanitarian need amidst this dire crisis is crucial as well. How do you view the involvement of the United States of America? Is it likely to improve the aid supplies? Is it likely to also crack down on the appropriation of the aid supplies by Hamas, and which does not allow it to go to ordinary Gazans?
Thank you for this important discussion, because as a part of the 20-point peace plan, humanitarian aid is one important aspect of it. And a few days back, we have seen a resolution in the UN Security Council for establishment of an international stabilizing force. So these measures, or these this 20-point peace plan is slowly being implemented. So I think this is a welcome sign, because Gazans have been suffering all this time for want of humanitarian aid. You would remember that UNRWA, which was earlier responsible for this kind of a thing, it was stopped by the Israelis, and Israelis themselves were trying to do the distribution, which was not quite successful. As you rightly said, that Hamas was one factor which didn't allow this aid to reach the population of Gaza. So now I think, this is my personal opinion, that with the intervention of the United States, this humanitarian aid will get an impetus. Because the moment you have the neutral observers here, you apart from the Israelis, we have the United States now trying to implement the peace process. And for Trump also, it's a very testing time, because we have seen in the recent past violation of the ceasefire, and both from the Hamas side as well as the Israelis. So this, I think, is a vital cog in the peace plan. And 600 trucks, as you mentioned, I don't think that is going to be sufficient as far as the population is concerned. We would expect around 1,000 trucks per day, because that would be the requirement initially, which can get tapered down to around 600 to 800 in the subsequent months. But right now, I think the requirement is of this magnitude. And we'll have to wait and watch how, what kind of mechanism is going to be employed now, with the US coming into play, that it reaches each and every person who is affected there in this place, Gaza, where all Palestinians, almost 20 lakh plus of people are staying here. So, I think it's a positive development. We'll have to wait and see how it gets implemented.
Indeed, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other very key developments. We're now learning that France has emerged as a key diplomatic player behind the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 2797 on Western Sahara. As per sources, Paris worked intensively to unite EU members, including Greece, Slovenia and Denmark, aligning them with a joint France-US position. A report suggests that French President Emmanuel Macron personally intervened during his October visit to Slovenia, convincing the leaders to back the resolution after initial hesitation. With the measure now passed, France and Morocco are collaborating on a revised autonomy proposal that will be soon submitted to a UN envoy staff. And it is a move that is aimed at reviving stalled negotiations among Morocco, Algeria, the Polisario Front and Mauritania. Of course, we've seen the resolution was passed with 11 votes in favor, 3 abstentions. These 3 abstentions were the Russian Federation, China and Pakistan. This resolution, in fact, designates Morocco's 2007 autonomy proposal as the basis for negotiations to resolve the decades-long territorial dispute. This Western Sahara, as we know, has a vast and mineral-rich territory. It was once colonized by Spain. It's long been contested between Morocco, which controls most of the region, and the Algeria-backed Polisario Front, which is seeking full independence. Therefore, the move was welcomed in Rabat but condemned by Algeria and the Polisario Front as unjust. In fact, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic is also a self-proclaimed entity with diminishing international recognition, and with this particular resolution, it has lost ground diplomatically as well. Algeria, of course, refused to participate in this particular vote, while China, along with Russia and Pakistan, as I mentioned earlier, abstained rather than vetoing this US-sponsored resolution. This plan envisions Western Sahara exercising self-rule under Morocco's sovereignty. With us on the broadcast is a Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, Senior Strategic and Defence Expert. As I mentioned earlier, Western Sahara is a mineral-rich region. There's been a lot of contestation regarding this. Morocco, of course, presented its autonomy proposal all the way back in 2007. That's been in limbo with the dispute intensifying. Now, with this particular resolution that has been passed, can it be viewed as a diplomatic win for the United States, for France as well, or would China and Russia's abstentions be indicative of them and their tacit assent to the resolution?
You see, when we look at how the UN actually is functioning, especially the Security Council, when there is abstention like that, as you are mentioning, it points to lack of unanimity in the thought and in trying to implement a particular security resolution. So I don't think that if China and Russia have not supported this resolution, they have also not vetoed it. So I take it in that spirit, in that light, that they have allowed it to process and get passed by the Security Council, because as long as there is no veto element into this kind of a thing, I think it a step in the right direction, I would say that. And we'll have to wait and watch and see how the things are going to progress there, because these border issues, you can take it any part of the world today. In India also, in Palestinians also, everywhere, Ukraine, Russia, they're not easy to resolve. So I think we need to wait how the things are going to move. And also, we would like to see what kind of role China and Russia would like to play into this.
Indeed. And what's interesting is that the Trump administration, the United States, has staunchly backed Morocco over this. Could this be a sort of outcome of Morocco becoming a part of the Abraham Accords and recognizing Israel about 4 years ago?
What I am trying to see is that Abraham Accord 2.0, what Trump is trying to bring into play, he is trying to get more people, and especially the Muslim countries. And Morocco being a Muslim country would actually give more weight for Trump to get this accord on board, because it's very important. We have been waiting. We also want to see if the Abraham Accord 2.0, if there is any change from Abraham Accord 1.0, because the very basis of Abraham Accord is looking at a two-state solution in this region, and so far, Trump's 20-point peace plan does not talk about it. So I think this would be one aspect which would be on the scanner of most of us and most of the countries who are affected by this, and especially the Arab countries, because they are all looking at a solution to the Palestinian problem and stability in West Asia, because I think that is the most important aspect. All these accords are being tabled on the floor just because they want to bring in stability in this region. Gaza plan is also looking at stability. So we'll have to see the rudiments of Abraham Accord 2.0, because so far, according to my information, I haven't seen the blueprint. And if it is there, I'll try to have a look. But as far as I remember, it hasn't been announced as such that Abraham Accord is going to have what kind of content or text into it. So once we are able to see the text of the Abraham Accord, then we'll be able to say with the certainty that we are looking at a solution to the Palestinian problem.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time and sharing your perspective on this development. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to more news coming in. Indonesian police say that they have found possible explosive powder as they investigate the blast that occurred at a mosque in Jakarta during Friday prayers. The explosions injured dozens of worshippers, and authorities say that the incident may have been a targeted attack. Police Chief Listio Sigit Prabowo has stated that several pieces of evidence were discovered, including written materials and powder that could have caused this explosion. Investigators are also examining social media activity and speaking with the suspect's family to gather more information. The suspected perpetrator is a 17-year-old student from a school next to the mosque. He underwent surgery after the incident and is now recovering. Police say that his improving condition will help the investigation move forward. Listen in to what the Indonesia National Police Chief has said.
Ditemukan beberapa bukti pendukung yang tentunya ini sedang kita kumpulkan. Ada tulisan, kemudian ada barang bukti serbuk yang diperkirakan bisa menimbulkan potensi terjadinya ledakan. Catatan lain kita kumpulkan, termasuk juga kita melakukan pemeriksaan terhadap media sosial, lingkungan keluarga untuk mengumpulkan semuanya. Nanti secara khusus setelah lengkap tentunya akan dirilis secara
This, of course, the latest. We do know this tragedy had occurred while Friday prayers were taking place at a mosque in Jakarta. Numerous people had tragically lost their lives in this particular incident as well. But in the meantime, the police have found possible explosive powder as they are continuing their probe into this particular blast that has taken place. A suspect has been nabbed. He has underwent surgery as well. The suspect is reported to be a 17-year-old school student who was attending a school right next to this particular mosque. Remember, the explosions had injured nearly 100 people during Friday prayers. Officers, of course, suspect that this could have been a targeted attack. The perpetrator is suspected to be the 17-year-old student at a school next to the mosque. He's recovering after undergoing surgery. The suspect's condition is improving, and the police hopes that this will make things and the probe easier. In fact, the police did not rule out the involvement of others as well. Investigators are examining the suspect's family and social media posts as well. Remember, there are about 100 people, 96 to be specific, who were wounded in this particular incident. 29 victims remain hospitalized. At least 2 are in intensive care. In fact, a spokesperson for the counterterrorism police unit, Densus 88, has stated that investigators had searched the suspect's home and they are still probing the motive behind this particular incident. In fact, there were statements that had come forth earlier from eyewitnesses who had stated that the moment of the blast had created a lot of confusion. People thought that it came from some electronic equipment, maybe the sound system, but it turned out that the explosion came from under a prayer mat. So police are of course probing all of these witness statements that are coming in as well. But up until now, the police has found possible explosive powder as they've investigated what's transpired, the tragic incident that transpired at a mosque in Indonesia while Friday prayers were taking place. Meanwhile, Afghanistan's Taliban government spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid has stated that the talks didn't succeed with Pakistan as it attempted to shift responsibility for its security to the Afghan government while showing no willingness to take responsibility for either Afghanistan's security or its own. Listen in.
Pakistan मुख्तलिफ पाकिस्तान जिन्होंने अन्य तुम मुस्लिम का पाकिस्तान का राजीसी और अफगानिस्तान काबू की हालत से अफगानिस्तान दिफा अमलना अब खबर रहीस दौर हम नती मुस्लिम अखस्तलतु तर्जुमान ذكر خبره नतीजा वन.
In Istanbul in Turkey to finalize a truce agreed upon on October 19th in Qatar following deadly clashes between the South Asian neighbors. Meanwhile, Zabihullah Mujahid has stated that he's spoken about the casualties that have taken place. Listen in.
Pakistan की कितना वक्त डिजाइनों मसला हम कुमन्ने मसला नहीं कि इस्लामी मतलातक सादे इत्तिबात करें والإلالوات اللي باكستان بخاطر كي لوي أو عارف بدون تفسير كده أو دران تلقات هم عارفين شو خانة كوي ده مسألة كل باكستاني سكون ده ندي إسلامي ما.
Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus to news coming in from the Philippines. We're learning that Phoon Wong, a super typhoon, the second in a week, is now churning towards the Philippines, with residents in its path warned to flee the looming destructive winds and life-threatening storm surges. Forecasters are now warning that the latest storm could strengthen into a super typhoon before making landfall on the eastern coast. The Philippines is no stranger to typhoons, and Phoon Wong is now the 21st named storm to impact the country this year. Its predecessor, Typhoon Kalmegi, has already left a trail of death and devastation as it tore through the central Philippines, reducing entire neighborhoods to rubble and displacing tens of thousands of people. Listen in to what some of the local residents have had to say.
Source ng bakon dahil sa parating na bagyo, agad na po kami lumikas dahil sa nung nakaraan bumuha na po sa amin at gusto ko lang maging safe ang pamilya ko, kaya umalis kami na maaga para naka-ready na din pagdating ng bagyo.
Kasi po sa sobrang lakas po ng alon po sa may tapat po kasi taga-pabahay po kasi ako. Tapos yung hangin po doon sobrang lakas po, tsaka yung dagat din po sobrang alon.
With us on the broadcast is Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute, joining us from Tokyo. Thank you so much for speaking to us. As I mentioned earlier, this is the 21st named storm to in fact hit the Philippines this year itself. There have been numerous growing concerns about the fact that this frequency of storms in 2025 is a result of global warming. Meteorologists have in fact warned about this particular phenomenon, and Philippines is already reeling from the havoc that has been wreaked by Typhoon Kalmegi, and now another storm, the Phoon Wong, is set to make landfall as well. How are you reading into this particular phenomenon?
Yes, it is true that many big typhoon is coming to Philippines, but originally they face many typhoon, and that is a tragic location. But at the same time, recently this typhoon is growing the size and big influence. That is true. At the same time, so how to deal with this kind of big typhoon is matter, and they need infrastructure to deal with. But because of the frequency of the typhoon, the visit, and at the same time, the huge budget is needed to prepare the infrastructure. So that's why currently the Philippines, even if the Philippines effort, indeed this kind of the infrastructure is not enough, and relatively big damage has happened.
Indeed, and what lessons can be learned from Japan as far as the infrastructure to counter, or at least weather through typhoons are concerned? Japan, of course, has made considerable progress as far as the infrastructure is concerned.
Of course, Japan invests huge, so that's why Japan's infrastructure is relatively strong. So even if the bigger typhoon comes, still Japan's damage is minimum. But at the same time, indeed, latest infrastructure is, of course, they demand a huge cost. But at the same time, even if this is not the latest one, so some island, Ishigaki Island, why the Ishigaki, we call Ishigaki is a stone wall, meaning Ishigaki is a Japanese word, but stone wall is meaning, and why this is the name of the island, because of the most of the houses surrounded by the stone, because they face typhoon frequently, and these are the stone wall has made in the Middle Age. So that's why this is not the latest technology. This is the traditional technology. Anyone can do that. So that's why if the Philippines or other island in typhoon affected islands need infrastructure, and even if there is not a huge budget, indeed this kind of stone wall style is possible, because this is this is a very old technology and traditional technology, and anyone can do that.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time and sharing your perspective with our viewers. With that, we shift focus to more news coming in. We're now learning that at least 5 people have been killed, around 130 others injured after a tornado has struck Rio Bonito do Iguacu in southern Brazil's Pará state. The violent storm has overturned cars, damaged homes and uprooted trees along the town of about 14,000 residents. According to Panara's Environmental Technology and Monitoring Agency, winds have reached speeds of 180 to 250 kmph. Panara's civil defense has reported that 30 people have suffered serious or moderate injuries, while roughly 100 have sustained minor wounds. Several buildings were damaged, including homes with masonry collapse. Listen in to what the governor for the state of Panara has had to say.
Tudo, né? Mas nos últimos 30, 40 anos não tinha se visto um tornado com essa força. Nós estamos falando de um tornado nível 3, com ventos acima de 250 por hora, quer dizer, algo que é difícil realmente alguma casa, até mesmo algum prédio comercial fiquem de pé. Nós vimos aí bombeiros local, a gente já começou a movimentar todas as equipes do interior do estado e também da capital, com toda uma infraestrutura para dar apoio num primeiro momento às famílias que ficaram desabrigadas, inclusive algumas vítimas.
In other development, Denmark has now announced a landmark decision to ban the use of social media for children under 15 years of age. The Danish government says that the move aims to protect youths and their mental health and reduce screen addiction among children. Parents, however, will be allowed to grant special permission for children as young as 13 to access certain platforms. Denmark's digitalization minister, Caroline Stage Olsen, has stated that social media companies are stealing children's time, childhood and well-being. A majority of parliamentary parties have already voiced support for the plan, ensuring its approval in an upcoming vote. Denmark joins countries like Australia, which has also introduced similar restrictions on children's use of social media. Well, viewers, that's all the time we have for this particular bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.
What we can do as